Can you find the balance between extremes, love or hate of humanity in all its diversity? Expressing your self-love or self-hate? Can you open yourself to life? These are all pressures, questions, and qualities that this cycle of the Human Design Weather for June 19th to 25th, 2026 bring. Hello, and welcome to the Human Design Weather or Not podcast with me, Margot Fraser. We move into a cycle where we'll have the June solstice on the 21st. Anytime that we have an equinox or a solstice, we have two of the four gates of love in the G center activated by the Sun-Earth positions. The G center is associated with love, identity, and direction in life. So let's get into the specifics here. This cycle begins on June 19th at 6:25 a.m., going until the 25th at 3:54 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time. Universal time coordinates, it's coming in on the 19th at 12:15 p.m., going until the 25th at 9:54 a.m. Remember to convert that to your own time zone so you know when it starts and ends for you. We always start with the Sun-Earth activations as that 70% of the conditioning field. The Sun has moved into Gate 15, the trait of extremes and love of humanity, or not. It has a keynote that says the quality of behavior which expresses the proper balance between extremes. It's part of the collective logic circuitry, so that's going to bring impersonal sharing of the patterns that will carry us into the future. Logic is about understanding, experimenting, repeating. This is the only universal gate. All living things, right down to a cell, has it. It has to do with collective behavior versus the individual behavior that we're going to see in Gate 10 in the Earth's position. It's in the 15th gate that we get differentiation because we have all the different possibilities of rhythms that can be created here, all of the extremes of behavior. In that sense, we have the whole field or spectrum of behavior. So love it or hate it, we humans are extreme in our nature. Now, as I mentioned, this is a gate that we find in the design of all life forms, and that gives us the diversity of species that we find on our planet. Diversity is really necessary for evolution. Collectively, we may see extremism playing out. Ultimately, though, it's about finding the balance for humanity. It calls on humanity to determine where do we want to be along that spectrum as we witness all these various patterns playing out. At a personal level, it can pull us towards extremes of your own behavior. So you might find yourself getting up early one day and then sleeping very late the next, eating a lot one day and hardly anything the next, doing a lot of activity one day and being kind of a couch potato the next. There are just so many ways that this can really play out. As you observe yourself in the extremes in your own patterns, it can help you to find the balance for yourself of what really resonates correctly to you. Of course, you do that by following your strategy and authority, and that's going to help you find your own flow. With this trait present, you might find that you're more adaptable to rhythms around you, and it can really support dealing well with diversity. You may notice diversity to a greater extent in nature and the range of uniqueness that's there. You may see extremes playing out in others that you judge negatively and that you might not be able to accept. Of course, that can create some friction. You might even judge your own behavior as extreme in a negative way, but if it truly came from your strategy and authority following that, well, it is what it is, so be it. This trait's rooted in the ability to confront any challenge without expectations. The ability to confront any challenge, to be able to accept any place within the spectrum of extremes is very important. There's adaptability in that. However, we may also see the alienation of others through extremes. So both the love and hate of humanity can be found here. Note that this transit's not going to be very comfortable if you have its electromagnetic gate 5 in your chart. That's the trait of fixed rhythms, fixed habits. So if you've got that in your design on its own, watch that this, extremes, trying to pull you to these extremes that this transit's going to bring, doesn't pull you out of your own beneficial habits. The Earth has moved into gate 10, the trait of behavior of the self and of self-love, or it could be self-hate. Its keynote says the underlying code of behavior, which ensures successful interaction despite circumstances. So the code of behavior here is really referring to the genetic code that you have in terms of how to survive. This is part of integration, which is all about survival of the individual. Even if you don't have this gate in your design, it's a roll gate. So it's still wired into you through your genetics in your profile. So if you've got the first line, that corresponds to the behavior of introspection and investigation. The second gate to the hermit that projects out and needs to put up barriers. The third to the martyr that has to go through trial and error. The fourth line to the opportunist who needs to wait for the correct opportunities. The fifth line to the heretic who universalizes practical solutions that don't necessarily conform to convention. And the sixth is the role model, eventually, after a trial and error period, through being one's unique self. This is, again, part of individual integration. So gate 10 is the gate within integration that provides your identity to that process of surviving as an individual. It's the gate of your nature and of being in the world. Its frequencies really condition the behavior of the world. There are 4 love gates in the G center. How you express your innocence in life comes from gate 25. How you express your rhythm comes from gate 15. How you express the existential quality necessary for being in the experience of life comes from gate 46. And all of those are poured out into the world through gate 10 in living life as an expression of yourself uniquely. This trait's rooted in accepting one's place in the world. There's a saying from John Kabat-Zinn that's perfect for this. Wherever you go, there you are. It brings the possibility to love yourself, to love being in the world and life as part of integration. It brings the message that the more you're being yourself, the stronger your capacity for surviving regardless of circumstances, which is what that keynote was speaking to. The polarity can also be expressed here, self-hate. Your love or hate for yourself is expressed through your behavior, and others can see that. All individual traits can drop into melancholy, and here it's the melancholy that no one knows how to behave. Just a note that we are going to have this gate in a channel with gate 20, one of its electromagnetics, for the full cycle. So that channel theme that we'll look at a bit later is what's going to dominate. When we look at the Sun-Earth traits together, your love for yourself or not and how you behave as a result of that can have you moving through extremes with others that in turn can lead to loving yourself in a greater way or hating yourself in a greater way. Your love and hate for yourself could have you join and share with groups that resonate with you, that could move you to more extreme patterns, or let's say amplify that love or hate or place along that continuum. When we look at the collective, we may see more extreme expressions and patterns playing out that bring out love or hate within us and may test your own ability to stay in a place of self-love and live as your unique self. If there are extreme things happening in the world around you, you may feel like your individual survival is threatened, and you may move into greater love or hate of humanity out of that. When you love yourself, you go through extremes, and you're meant to. If you don't love yourself, well, you might go through extremes that are more difficult to navigate. So many different ways that that combination can play out here. Let's move to the nodes now in the transit field. They're what really bring the homogenized perspective and direction that we'll see play out in the world. This is the context that the transit field is bringing, with the sun, earth, and other planets expressing themselves within that context. We can't separate ourselves from our environment, so the qualities of the traits can also play out through us. We have the North Node sitting in gate 55, the individual trait of abundance and spirit in the emotional center. It brings the general context that's about the individual spirit. It brings a moody, glass half full, glass half empty perspective, as well as passion and romance, or their polarities. Gate 55 has the highest highs and the lowest lows of all the gates in the emotional center. So there could be more volatility in the world while this is present. Since individual traits can drop into melancholy, there's the potential for seeing and feeling the melancholy that may be there in the world. The South Node sitting in gate 59, the tribal trait of sexuality in the sacral center. It's part of the channel of mating, and it's going to bring a general context where one-on-one relationships are highlighted, whether intimate, friendships, or business partnerships. It could also bring an environment where literal fertility issues are more present, and where there could be creative fertility or not. The nodes are sitting in line 2 with its theme of projecting out this trait, although it doesn't mean that the individual can actually fulfill on it. Line 2 also carries themes of an antisocial nature and selectiveness. For gate 55, line 2 is called distrust. It has a developmental theme that says abundance hampered by slander or gossip. So what's being projected out here is the mood, right? You're projecting out that your glass is half full or your glass is half empty. So we're going to have everyone who gets impacted by this trait, and that's everyone who has the emotional center defined or gets it defined through an electromagnetic connection with a transit field gate, which is going to happen if you have any of gate 6, gate 39, or gate 30 in your own design. Its exaltation says emotional stability and the strength of the spirit is dependent on being trusted by others. The detriment says the emotional drive to insist on trustworthiness that does not guarantee its acceptance by others or benefits the spirit. So here, where you're at in your mood is it's where you're at. Your mood is what your mood is. But the up and down of it, the fickleness of it, can create distrust. Your ability to relate to others can have them accept where you're at. But if you're trying to convince others that they can trust where you're at, all that does is create deeper distrust. For gate 59, line 2 is called shyness. And it has a developmental theme that says self-imposed barriers. Second lines are selective and are in their own process, which is a little tricky when it's part of the channel of mating and intimacy. It's hard to know how to deal with the other, with the line 2. So there's this natural putting up of barriers, and we label that as shyness. And it's going to need the boldness of another to come in and break down those barriers and call that person out into intimacy in this case. In the detriment, these barriers are intensified with only very, very specific persons having the consistency of boldness and the exact genetic attraction for the intimacy to work. Gate 59 is an expression of the genetic reproductive genes. Overall, then, our conditioning field with these second lines is going to bring a natural guardedness and this putting up of barriers, as well as a distrustfulness that's going to make it more difficult to establish those one-on-one relationships at, again, whatever level that is. Okay, so that sets our context that we're likely to see around us. Let's move on now to looking at our short to long-term channels. A reminder that when the transit field creates a channel, everyone that doesn't already have it in their chart is receiving activation of the related traits and qualities. So it has a big impact that way. As I mentioned, for the full cycle, we have the Earth's position, the trait of behavior of the self and self-love, connecting with one of its electromagnetics, gate 20 in the throat center, which is being activated by Uranus. Gate 20 is the gate of the now, and it's the most existential gate in the body graph. It's sitting in line 4 called application. It has a developmental theme that says recognition and awareness that can only be transformed into action in cooperation with those who have the ability to act upon the understanding. So line 4s can see the other end of its channel. It's a throat gate here so it can express its individual knowing in the now. In the exaltation, it's the teacher whose students can really grasp and understand that knowing and use it to transcend the teacher. In the detriment, the students can't really grasp the knowing, the explanations that are expressed here. And so it just remains theory. The students aren't going to be able to do anything with that because they really don't get it. Together here, the Earth's position, gate 10, and Uranus create the 1020 channel of awakening, a design of commitment to higher principles. Again, this is part of integration, which supports our survival as individuals and can be self-empowering. This channel is where self-love and acceptance of yourself, or self-hate and non-acceptance of yourself through your behavior in the now, can be expressed. When you're loving yourself and your uniqueness, that can be very empowering to others without you even knowing it. It also helps you to know how to behave in any circumstance as yourself and survive whatever comes your way. Since this channel involves the throat, there can be this tendency to blurt out your self-expression uninvited, in which case it's likely not to be recognized, which is really deflating here, given that it's an expression of your very self, your uniqueness. If you're criticized, it can also hit harder while this channel is present, as it can feel like your very self is being criticized. When you're invited and it's correct for you according to your strategy and authority, the self-love and self-acceptance you share in the now is awakening. All right, we've got our medium-term channel of acceptance, a design of an organizational being that came in on June 17th and is going to be with us until July 12th. We have Mercury sitting in gate 62, the trait of details in the throat center, connecting with Neptune's position. Gate 17, the trait of opinions in the Ajna center. Gate 17 is correlated biologically to the right eye, and it takes in patterns in the now. Gate 17 is really going to bring the pressure to conceptualize your theories and opinions from all the various patterns you've taken in to determine which might be best to carry you and humanity into the future. It's sitting in line 1 called openness. It brings the possibility to be open to many patterns and having opinions in many areas. Or, like an art critic, only having opinions when it comes to a certain area of interest that you really enjoy, but no opinion in any other area. So both those sides can play out there. Now, Neptune is going to make it tougher to grasp the patterns and opinions with its veiling effect, so it's likely to slow down that process. Gate 62, the trait of detail in the throat center with its voice of I think, brings all the facts and details together to express to others so that they can really understand the pattern, the formula, the theory that you're trying to express. Since Mercury's all about communicating, it's really a good fit for this throat gate, but it's also going to put more pressure on expressing your opinions and theories with all the facts and details. If it hasn't been invited, all those facts and details can be annoying or boring or overwhelming to others. Because gate 17 carries anxiety of being challenged, there can also be this expressing of made up facts here to try and convince others so that you won't be challenged. There's also going to be pressure to organize people and things that this channel is going to bring, and Mercury could also bring a lot of talking about getting things organized and how things should be organized or the lack of organization. All right. Well, let's look at the consistent themes present in the cycle through the definition related to those channels, which includes the gate activation in the related centers. And it happens that our channels are in a single definition here. So I'll leave out the moon and the inner planet transits unless they're in a channel or present for most of the cycle. This definition is what everyone in the world is going to be directly conditioned by through the transit field. It'll run those that aren't aware. However, with your awareness, you'll have the potential to learn from these frequencies when it's correct for you. We have Both channels, as I mentioned, in the same definition for the full cycle. So they're going to be working together here. They activate the ajna, the throat, and the G centers. So any other gates in those centers are going to be pulled into those definitions. In the G center, we have gate 15, that trait of extremes. That's our sun's position that we've talked about already. We also have gate 56 being activated by Jupiter in the throat center. This is the trait of stimulation, and it's part of the mental collective abstract process where the ideas that have come from the making sense process can be expressed out through stimulating stories. This is the trait of stimulation. It wants to stimulate others with its beliefs and what it's made sense of. Now, this gate 56 is going to start the cycle in line 2 called linkage. Given the selectivity of the second line, the exaltation says a genius for simulating expression that will take time to mature and will need others to recognize it, right? Line 2s need to be called out. In the detriment, it says a gift for communicating, but not enough depth. So there hasn't been that maturing time with this. And given that this is in the transit field, we're more likely to hear the detriment. So lots of talk and not enough depth. On June 21st at 5:07 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time, which is going to be 11:07 p.m. UTC, Jupiter is going to move into line 3, which is called alienation. It has a developmental theme that says determine self-sufficiency. Now, the third line is still in its own process. Those lines 1, 2, 3 are more internalized, and then 4, 5, 6 are externalized. They recognize that there's something else out there. So here, the third line, well, it doesn't really know how to externalize and is going to have to go through its trial and error process. This, again, is the gate of stimulation. So the pressure here is to tell those stories and share those beliefs in a way that stimulates others. This line wants others to listen to it, and yet may not know yet how to express things in a way that's really stimulating. And so it's going to try and force the way that it thinks it should do it on others, as well as forcing its beliefs on others. That's probably going to come across as overbearing, although there could be something interesting there to others. Or there can be trying so hard to control the situation, get everyone to listen so that they can express themselves, that the stimulation actually becomes secondary to just trying to control. And that could offend others. So this line really doesn't want anyone interfering with its expression. It wants to be self-sufficient, but for better or worse, it's going to get feedback and it's going to need to adapt or not. Trial and error or not. So here, because everyone's getting impacted by this, we can have all these people trying to take control so that others will listen to what they have to say. And this expression of beliefs that are often just going to be blurted out in the not self rather than following strategy and authority and waiting to be invited. And, there may be all this people kind of offending each other or just being turned off and bored because it's not stimulating. All right, looking at this definition all together now, we could have expressing oneself in the now that shows self-love and self-acceptance of your extremes in an organized way that could empower, awaken, and stimulate others. Sounds great, right? Well, what we're more likely to see in the not-self world is disorganized behavior that reflects a lack of self-love and a lack of acceptance of diversity, and includes off-putting expressions of beliefs that don't make sense and taking any criticism as an insult to one's very identity and being very offended by that. We could have organizing people and things to express supporting awakening in the now and expressing the extremes of self-love in the now in a stimulating way. We still have a lot of pressure on the throat. So watch that you're not just blurting things out before being invited, or it's likely to be to the wrong people at the wrong time. But expect that a lot of people around you are just going to be blurting things out with that verbal diarrhea. So be patient, bring compassion to it. You'll understand why that's happening. All right, let's look at the remaining long-term transits in the undefined centers now. Whether these traits have a personal impact on you is going to depend on your own design. What remains is gate 21, the trait of the hunter, huntress, and control in the ego center, the heart center. That's being activated by Saturn. It's in line 5 called objectivity. And it has a developmental theme that says the use of force must be based on impartiality and not emotionally motivated. In its exaltation, it says a principled and legal character that ensures objectivity, the balanced ego whose willpower is applied objectively. This trait again is about managing resources and people so that the tribe can be materially successful. Over time, one can learn to apply that willpower to control things in an objective way, which is what we would really prefer to have. And right now, the detriment's not active in the world, so we don't have the detriment. That's kind of nice. We also have in the transit field gate 41, the trait of decrease and contraction in the root center, and that's part of the abstract experiential circuitry. It's sitting in line 4 called correction, where you can use this drive to adapt and correct along the way to fulfill an experience, or you can use that fuel to maintain harmonious relationships at the expense of adapting. It's just going to result in a different kind of journey. We've already talked about the nodal gates 55, the trait of spirit with its moodiness, and gate 59, the trait of sexuality that set the context. And they bring those projections again of distrust and shyness into the field. All right, just a quick review to finish up here of the channels that are being created by transits of the moon. They're only present for about 10 or 11 hours, give or take, so they don't have a big impact on the homogenized conditioning field that we talked about with the definition, but they could have a personal impact. You just never know. So I'll just briefly go through these. The first is coming in June 21st at 1:13 a.m., going until 11:39 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. UTC, that's coming in June 21st at 7:13 a.m., going until 5:39 p.m. We have the 59-6 tribal channel of mating and intimacy, connecting the sacral center to the solar plexus emotional center. This is the design of reproduction, and it's going to bring the pressure to literally reproduce, or figuratively can bring this creative fertility. Next up, we have coming in June 22nd at 7:42 p.m., going until the 23rd at 6:36 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time. UTC coming in on the 23rd at 1:42 a.m., going until 12:36 p.m. The moon is moving into gate 57, so that's going to bring 2 additional channels to our integration circuitry here. First, the 5710 integration channel of perfected form, connecting the splenic center to the G center. This is the design of survival that brings the pressure to perfect your own form or that of things in your environment, which in turn helps you to survive. Second, it brings the 5720 channel of the brainwave, connecting the splenic center to the throat center. This is the design of awareness that brings the pressure to express what you know in the now. Combining that with the channel of awareness, the expression in the throat is, I know I'm behaving now. I know I'm loving and accepting myself now. I know I'm behaving badly now. Those are all potentials that could come out of there. I know myself now. All right. Last up, it's coming in June 25th at 3:02 a.m., going until 2:18 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. UTC coming in at 9:02 a.m. on the 25th, going until 8:18 p.m. We have the 8-1 individual channel of inspiration connecting the G center to the throat center. This is the design of a creative role model, and it brings the pressure to express your unique creativity and your unique direction into the world, your own way, no matter what anyone else thinks. All right, that brings us to the end of the cosmic weather for this cycle. Happy solstice. I hope it's a wonderful day for you as we have that longest day of the year and the shortest day of the year. If you're in the southern hemisphere, there's our extremes, right? So if you want to run your own chart, you can go to jovianarchive.com. If you're new to human design and you just want to understand the body graph at a very basic level, at a high level, what's the black and the red about, the different geometric shapes and so on, feel free to grab my free Human Design Basics mini course. It's at margotgfraser.com/human-design. All right, have a great cycle. Be kind to one another, and may you know, love, and live the magic of your true nature. Until next time, bye for now.